Okay, I have an incredible show for you today. Someone that I have spent 8 or 9 months trying to track down. She's incredibly busy and sought after. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I wanted to go over a couple of big stories in the news and get your take on them. CNN is finally admitting that Donald Trump is starting to dominate in many areas of the upcoming election against Biden, especially in important swing states and states that he lost in 2020, where he's making ground like Virginia. You recently wrote on Twitter that Democrats can't compete when it comes to issues, so they are weaponizing the government against their political enemies. This is keeping President Trump tied up in court versus out with the people. I wondered if you could speak to that, and also, could this actually be the thing that helps him win? Is all of these people rooting for the underdog?
Yeah, Stephen, this is such an important point because it really gets to the heart of the threat to our democratic republic right now. And it's playing out right before our very eyes, where instead of holding what we would want as voters, which is some kind of a debate or conversation or a comparison of, two presidents, President Trump and President Biden, both of whom have a record. So we don't have to guess what kind of President Trump would be. Look at border security. There's a clear contrast there. Look at the economy, clear contrast there. Look at foreign policy, clear contrast there. You can go down the list of major issues that are most concerning to the American voter across the board, and especially the 43% of voters who don't identify with either party. The Democrats, elite, and President Biden know that when they do that side-to-side comparison, it's not a good story for them to tell. And that what voters want is more aligned with the record that President Trump has shown through his previous tenure as president. So what do they resort to? They resort to name calling, they resort to smear attempts, something I experienced in 2020 when I ran in the Democratic primary. And dangerously, they're undermining the rule of law and our democracy by weaponizing the Department of Justice and law enforcement, not only at the federal level, but in different states, in order to try to tie up Donald Trump in court, drain him of time, drain him of resources. He can't have his phone while he's in the courtroom. It's not being covered by the media, in the hopes that by doing so, voters may only get one side of the story, which is the story that the Democrat elite and MSNBC and CNN and others want voters to get. This should be like a red flag alarm bell to every American, regardless of what party you're aligned with or which candidate you like, even. Because if the Democrat elite are allowed to get away with this, it will set a new precedent for us in the United States of America that will make us more and more like what we see in dictatorships and banana republics, where the party in power weaponizes public institutions to go after their political opponent, rather than the democracy that we celebrate, where we as voters are the ones who get to decide who we want as president and commander-in-chief without the interference of the party that's in power.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I know that there are rumors that you are on a short list to be vice president, so I don't want to talk about that. But hypothetically speaking, if you were Donald Trump's vice president, what would you do or recommend be done to handle the invasion on the southern border? I know you're from Hawaii. If suddenly hundreds of boats were showing up on the shores of Hawaii and flooding that, surely people would do something. But here, the Biden administration seems to be welcoming them, handing out money, offering free health care, free hotel stays. How would you handle it differently if you were in a leadership position?
Yes, Stephen, thank you for asking this question. I was just at the border in California a few weeks ago, spent a couple of days down there. There's a lot of attention in the mainstream media that's often focused on states like Texas and Arizona, as well as the cities and states where many of these illegal immigrants are being dropped off at or are flying to. But there's an untold story about what's happening at the California border. And what I saw there was a very stark picture of what wide open borders looks like and what the multi-billion-dollar human trafficking operation being run by the cartels and facilitated by the Biden-Harris administration and their open door policies, the kind of negative impact that's having not only on the communities there, the border communities in California, but really across the country. It operates like a well-oiled machine. Border Patrol agents are frustrated because they have been reduced to essentially Uber drivers. They go and they pick up illegal immigrants at these spots where dependably the illegal immigrants know where to go. I saw them. They walk across the border, and sometimes in small groups, sometimes in groups of hundreds, they go exactly to this place that is known as a pickup point every day throughout the day. If you go there, you will see illegal immigrants there. They get processed in, picked up by Border Patrol. They get their piece of paper that says they applied for asylum, and maybe they have a court date in 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 years, and then they get on a plane or get in a car and go and disappear somewhere in the country. What we need to do, and what I would do if I were in a position to directly secure our border, is give our Border Patrol agents the authority that they need to secure our border, number one. And number two, they are undermanned and under-resourced. We should federalize the National Guard and deploy our National Guard troops to secure our border and ensure that they have the authorities to be able to do that. Simultaneous to this, there has to be work done with Congress to fix these broken laws that are being exploited, these loopholes that are being exploited, to make sure that our legal immigration system is working, and that this broken immigration system that's being exploited is resolved and fixed.
Do you think the word has gotten out worldwide that the border is open? Because it does seem that people they know that this is their chance to get into America. They know that they're getting cell phones, financial assistance, hotel stays, food. They're trying to get them driver's licenses and jobs. Like, is the word out worldwide that America is open?
Yes, I have no doubt about that. And it's exactly what I knew to be true before I went to the border. And I went to the border and I saw firsthand the people that I spoke to. I spoke to illegal immigrants from all over the world during the 2 days that I was there. I saw passports, ID cards, visas, official government documents strewn across the border wall from all over the world. For whatever reason, people are coming across the border and either lighting their passports on fire or trying to tear them up. And it, I couldn't walk 3 feet without coming across another official government piece of documentation or identification, which, for me, naturally, the next question is, well, if they're why are they destroying their identification, first of all? And second of all, how are they being vetted and processed when they're going through the border security processing centers? How are they just saying, hey, my name is Joe Smith, I'm from such and such country, and there's no way to verify exactly who they are, which just further highlights the security risk that we're facing. Is we really don't know who is in our country. Of the millions that have come across our border illegally in the Biden and Harris administration, we don't know where they are at, and we don't know what their intentions are in this country.
Yeah. One story that I tried to give as much attention to as I could was the fires over in Maui.
Yeah.
I went to Maui. I saw it with my own eyes. It's just absolutely heartache. It just broke my heart. How infuriating is it for you and the people of Hawaii, our brothers and sisters, that they get a one-time $700 check after losing everything, all their memories, their worldly possessions, many of them their jobs, their multi-generational home, and then we pass almost a $100 billion foreign aid package that gives the equivalent of tens of thousands of dollars per person in Ukraine. I mean, what are you seeing as a former representative of the Hawaiian people?
Yeah, Lahaina and West Maui, the island of Maui, was in my district throughout the 8 years that I served in Congress. I grew up on a different island, but my district, the 2nd Congressional District, included every island in the state, everything but that urban corridor of Honolulu. And so it was, to say it was heartbreaking, to me, it puts it too lightly. It was infuriating to me to see the failure in response by government at every level from the moment those fires started. Those fires, as you know, on West Maui, it's the dry side of the island. Small brush fires are not uncommon, but the unique phenomena of the brush fires plus, very, very strong winds coming through the valley, combined with the fact that people couldn't access water, even as they tried to hose down their homes to protect them from being burned down. There were all of these different things that led to this tragedy. To have the head of FEMA, the director of FEMA, I remember this, seeing this because it was so maddening. She stood there in the White House, speaking to the White House press corps, who were rightly asking her, what are you doing? What are you actually doing for the people of Maui? Like yeah, we know you have people on the ground. We know you have resources, but what are you actually doing for them? And she stood there proudly proclaiming, well, we have issued a one-time $700 payment to those affected by the fire. What a slap in the face. And a punch in the gut, like add rubbing salt in the wounds and injuries that these people were experiencing. And to your point about the funding, I was there on Maui just a few days after the fire, went out to West Maui, was speaking to the families there and listening to what was going on. And a few of them in different places on their own made kind of an offhanded comment like, gosh, if only Maui was called Kiev or Ukraine, maybe then somebody would pay attention to us and get us what we need, which at that time was food and water and shelter, the ability to communicate. They had like a couple of Starlinks set up in different places, and they were asking for radios because they couldn't even communicate with those who had the resources to be able to help. There are people across our country who, like those in Lahaina and West Maui, are struggling and suffering. People in East Palestine, Ohio, who are still dealing with that toxic spill and the aftermath of that and the contamination of water and soil. The needs in our country are great. And so to see how easily and flippantly too many elected leaders from both parties are saying, yeah, you know what, we'll just send another 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 billion dollars out to Ukraine, for example, without any ability to define, well, where is this money actually going? How is it being spent? How are we accounting for it in a government that is known to be very corrupt? What does winning look like? How much longer are they going to tell us as taxpayers they're going to keep writing blank checks to Ukraine for? And to what end? How does it serve our national security interests? With this increasing escalation that continues, I just saw in the news today, Stephen, that Russia and Putin are scheduling tests of tactical nuclear weapons, more easily deployable than the big strategic nuclear weapons, but not posing any less of a risk. Once a nuclear weapon is used, we will face the catastrophic outcome of a nuclear war in the world. The stakes are serious. I wish that we had what we really need are leaders in Washington who put the American people first. It's that simple.
Yeah. Well, that's what we want. That's why I want you on my show. I know that you are fighting for the country. You're fighting for the people. I don't know if most people know, but you are still very actively involved in the U.S. military.
Yes.
Just through your military eyes, I know you kind of just talked about this, but how dangerous is it to continue to feed a war that could bleed over to other parts of the world, could end up in a nuclear interaction, even if on a small scale, because once those weapons start being used, other nations are going to start using them. And then how quickly does this thing get out of control? That's my worry.
All it takes is one, Stephen. All it takes is one. And this is something that hits close to home in Hawaii. I talk about this experience that we had in Hawaii in my book, For Love of Country, just a few years ago, when early on a Saturday morning, the people of Hawaii woke up to an alert on their cell phones and on their televisions saying, inbound missile to Hawaii, seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Given our proximity to North Korea, the assumption is this is the big one. this is it. We've got, 15 minutes, 20 minutes max left before our entire island chain in Hawaii is absolutely destroyed. I happened to be in Washington, D.C. that morning, but the stories that I heard, the feelings and emotions that I went to of knowing, like, okay, this message says seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. I'm thinking about my mom and dad. Where are they going to go? Hawaii, people don't have basements in Hawaii. It's just not something that we have. But even if people do have basements, is it something that will withstand a nuclear blast or the nuclear fallout or the nuclear winter that will follow? The answer to that is no. There are no bunkers or shelters that the government has built to withstand this kind of attack. All it takes is one before we recognize that it will spin radically out of control, and it will be the end of civilization. It is nothing less than that. This is why President Reagan rightly said a nuclear war cannot be won and should never be fought. It is his words that are ringing so loudly today as we face this increased threat of nuclear war, more so than ever before. And it may not even be kicked off intentionally. In these situations, there are close calls, miscommunications, misreads of information that could spark a nuclear war that would affect not only people here, but people around the world.
Yeah. Wow. So you ran for president as a Democrat. I watched the debates. It was the first time that I really became aware of you. And then you ended up leaving. Andrew Yang ended up leaving. And it was the first time that I was like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't the party of JFK anymore. And then I started watching as, wait a minute, this party that used to be against war seems to be very pro-war. This party that fought for women now allows men to take over their sports, beat them up in public, let them back out on the streets. They used to be against poverty. They don't care anymore. They used to be against crime. It seems they don't care anymore. Yeah. So what were the main reasons that you decided to leave the Democrat Party?
Yeah, this is something that I tried to tackle both when I was vice chair of the DNC as a candidate running for president in the Democratic primary, was exactly what you're talking about, Stephen, is trying to bring the Democratic Party back to the party of JFK, back to that party that I joined in 2002, specifically because what I saw was a big tent party that celebrated free speech, that stood up for civil liberties, that was willing to take on the corporate elite and fight for the little guy. And you fast forward to where we are today, and it is not only unrecognizable. Today's Democrat Party stands for exactly the opposite of all of those things. Fundamentally, and in my book, each chapter that I wrote tackles one of the major issues of why I left the Democratic Party. There's an issue, a chapter related to war and peace, and where the Democrat elite are today, my own experiences of having deployed to 3 different war zones, and the lessons that I learned from that about the cost of war and about how wrongheaded so many of our foreign policy decisions are, and how, unfortunately, today's Democrat elite, for example, are so tightly controlling the party leadership that even members of Congress who dare to stand out and say, you know what, President Biden, you really need to negotiate a peace between Russia and Ukraine. Otherwise, we will find ourselves on the brink of nuclear war. They were immediately kind of kowtowing with fear in the corner and withdrawing and retracting their statements. Fundamentally, in each of these chapters, as I tackle major issues, many of them that you just mentioned, it comes down to freedom. Their undermining of our fundamental freedoms, trying to control what we say, what kind of information we see and hear, control our decisions on the ballot and who we choose to support and who we choose to elect. Ultimately, all of this being driven by their insatiable hunger for power and their desire for control. They are putting their self-serving interests and their partisan interests ahead of the interests of the American people and our country. And fundamentally, that is the problem that we need to address and why we need to hold them accountable.
Yeah. as you were putting your book together, was there a particular chapter in For Love of Country that stood out to you or brought you the most joy when you were writing it?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. Chapter 4 is a chapter about God. My inspiration, my motivation comes from my desire to try to live my life in a way that's pleasing to God. I go through in this chapter and just sharing what's in my heart, but also sharing how concerning it is that today's Democrat Party, again, distinct from the party of the past, is doing their very best to try to remove God from every facet of our public life. A party that is eager to target people of faith, people of spirituality, especially Christians in this day and age, while, as we are seeing with these radical Islamist protests on our campuses, these pro-Hamas protests, they're unwilling to call that out for what it is because they're afraid of being called Islamophobes. It is undermining the very spiritual fabric of our country. And therefore, it's no surprise that we're seeing a lot of that erosion taking place within our schools, within our communities, within our society. I talk about some of the experiences that I had. I won't share everything that's in the book, but that chapter especially, it brought me tears as I wrote it. Some of them were tears of sadness, some of them were tears of joy, but ultimately getting across the message that even as dark as times may be, our hope springs eternal because of God's eternal unconditional love for every one of us.
Yeah, I've read some of C.S. Lewis's books where he talks about how dark and dreary life felt during World War II.
Yeah.
Yet he had hope that life could get better. I hope everyone listening to this also has hope that this world and our country can be better. Final questions. I know that we're up against other interviews that you have. Excuse me. You mentioned Ronald Reagan. He talked about being a leader of the free world and keeping the world safe, peace through strength. As I study the Biden administration and Jake Sullivan and others, this feels like they're trying to achieve peace through weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back at the Trump years where he started no new wars. He was able to get the Abraham Accords in place. Life felt not only prosperous, but safe, very safe. People traveled the world. What are your thoughts on the juxtaposition of a Biden administration and a Trump administration as far as keeping America and the world safer?
Yeah, again, this is one of those main focal areas where there is such a clear contrast, and you can, people will comment on the methods and the means and the comments and the policies, but really the results speak for themselves. Sadly, directly impacting us here in America, undermining our own national security, but undermining really the peace, ability to live in peace and pursue prosperity in the world. And so, you almost don't have to say much when you look at the 4 years under the Trump administration, and you look at now almost 4 years under the Biden-Harris administration, and how we are looking today down the barrel of not just one proxy war, this regime change war that the US is waging via Ukraine against Russia, but in almost every region of the world, there is either a war we are involved with or one that is bubbling up and on the precipice that where just a spark could invoke something far more serious. Ronald Reagan really provided that strong leadership and inspired that peace through strength. And we can draw inspiration from examples of great leaders from our past. First and foremost, focusing on if we are to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, if we are to be that shining light on the hill, it starts right here at home. President Biden has declared that his foreign policy is based on going and democracies versus autocracies and supporting democracies and defeating autocracies. And yet the hypocrisy is staring us all in the face as he undermines our democracy every day right here at home. So it starts with us getting our own house in order. It starts with all of us stepping up and exercising our freedoms to defend our freedom and to use our voices and our votes in this upcoming election. Send home those politicians who are undermining our constitutional rights and liberties, and supporting candidates who really truly take that commitment seriously to uphold our Constitution and put the well-being and interests of the American people and our country first.
Yeah, one more follow-up question. Is it selfish for Donald Trump to project the message that America should take care of itself so that it can be strong for the rest of the world? Like, as I watch CNN and MSNBC, it's almost like they make me feel bad for wanting my tax dollars to go to senior citizens here and veterans here and people struggling here, single mothers, school systems. Like, why do they make me feel selfish for wanting to help my own American citizens, my brothers and sisters right here at home?
First of all, to directly answer your question, the message that President Trump is projecting is correct, and it is on point, and it is needed. When you look at the way that you are made to feel by the pundits or the talking heads on CNN or MSNBC, it really points to what I think this election is really about, which is bigger than one party versus the other, and it's the elite versus the people. For those of us who care about our friends and neighbors and our communities and understand that there are basic things, basic needs that we expect our governments and our taxpayer dollars to address and to go toward, rather than going and trying to deal with all these other things around the world. And I'm not an isolationist. We cannot be isolationists. We need to build strong partnerships and friendships, and at a minimum, be able to have conversations and communications with other countries around the world. But we should expect and demand that our leaders will make their decisions based first and foremost on what do the American people need? What will actually serve our interests, whether they be our domestic interests or our national security interests. And for those who make you feel bad for wanting that and expecting that from our government, they are the elite who they're fine in their ivory towers. They're fine in their nice, safe, secure houses. They're fine because they're not being impacted by inflation, by crime-riddled streets, by a wide open border. They are safe and secure in their little bubble, and therefore project elsewhere without actually caring for what we need here at home.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a very interesting election cycle. Obviously, yes. I'm hoping for more Trump years, more conservative values, more looking after the American people. And so thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your service to our country, not only as a politician, but in the military, and for using your voice to teach other people how to have courage and put our families first, put our country first. For Love of Country is an awesome book. I want everybody to go get it. I'm going to put a direct link so people don't have to try and search it. They'll just go right to it. If people want to follow you online, Tulsi, where can I point them towards? Is Twitter best, or where should I point them?
I'm on all the different social media platforms at Tulsi Gabbard. And again, appreciate you having me on, Stephen, and sharing this book with the country at a time that I think is really important, where there are a lot of people who feel politically homeless. This election will be decided by people who right now today don't know who they're going to vote for. President Trump has a huge base of support. President Biden has his own base of support. As we head into this next election in November, I just encourage people, and whether it's your viewers or maybe it's their friends or family members who might not know exactly what to do, the message that I have is it's up to us, we the people, regardless of your politics, to save our country, to defend our freedom. And that is what is on the line right now. And my book goes into a very compelling argument drawn from my personal experiences of not only why we should leave the Democrat Party behind, but more importantly, why we, the people, need to stand up and ensure we have a government of, by, and for the people that stands for freedom and a true democracy.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm excited. Thank you so much for coming on,
Thank
for writing
you.
the book. I'll put that link down below. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Aloha.